Ooh, that looks tasty.
It's all become too much. These monsters are attacking us from every side, and there's nothing we can do. All we can do is die.
I have an idea. Why don't we create our own monsters and have our monsters fight their monsters? I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Welcome, folks. Today the Hungry Gamer is back with another Kickstarter preview, and today we are talking about the 7th Citadel, designed by Ludwig Rowdy and Bruno Sauter, with art also by Ludwig Rowdy and published by Serious Pulp. And I do sincerely apologize if I pronounce any of those names incorrectly. Before I go any further, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the basics of how to play, that's where you'll find the corrections. Additionally, I do need to point out that everything that you're going to see is still in the prototype phase and is subject to change. What 7th Citadel is it is an exploration, I'm not going to say legacy game because you're not destroying anything, but it is a pretty heavy campaign game in which you are building up your own colony and slowly exploring the region surrounding you in this world that is beset by this ongoing war between, well, monsters. Some of the monsters you didn't create, some of the monsters you did create. Oops. If you are not interested in how this game is played, just want to jump ahead to my final thoughts, or if you do not want to risk any kind of spoilers, and there might be a few as I talk about how the game is played, then you're going to want to jump into my final thoughts. And to do that, you're going to want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, here we go. So first I'm going to remove the map here, which is covering just a few cards, and we can talk about how this game is played very briefly. So at the beginning of the game, you will select a character per player or more than one, up to you. And the characters are pretty simple in that they give you a tiny little miniature and tells you a little bit about the character. I'll note there is a male and a female side, and each character also comes with its own deck of cards, basic abilities that it has, and then on top of that, you're going to select from 4 different, and then from there, you will wind up adding another deck of cards to it. In this case, over here, I have leadership cards, and these are stealth cards over here. And each character will pick one of those 5 cards and add them to their deck. It is possible to do some mixing and matching, but you get the idea. Now, the way the game is going to work is you're going to be getting a bunch of story text, and that story will eventually lead you to a variety of cards that you'll be drawing out of the box. And each card will have, again, more story information on it. And on the reverse side, it will have one of a couple of different things. It might be tests and events like over here or down here. Or it might be something like the tile that I'm on right now, which is just a map tile. And as you can see, as you play, you are slowly building out this map. In this case, it is this citadel that you're in. And on there, you'll see that there are a variety of different places you can go. And there's different symbols, which mean different things. For example, these little gate symbols actually mean you wind up starting with one of these here. And then when you go to the tile to check it out, then you flip it over, and something will happen, and it'll eventually tell you, when you've completed that, it'll tell you what tile to actually go to afterwards. In this case, it would be 31. As you can see, there's my 31. I would read that and flip it over, and again, it tells me what I'm going to do. Now, the actual gameplay itself is making decisions on where you're going, and then doing tests, for want of a better way to describe it. So, for example, I have this character here, and you'll see it tells you right here to move, I have to draw a card, spend an energy, and then I'll actually get to keep a card. This is one of the ways that you're building up what it is that you're actually able to do. So even though you start the game with 2 cards in your hand, if I wanted to, say, move down here, all I would do is I would draw a new card, and then I could keep it. If I had more than 4 in my hand, I'd have to discard one. Now, keeping and discarding cards matters because you will lose the game if you ever run out of life. And every time you have to reshuffle your whole deck, you're going to lose 5 life as you've kind of run out of energy. So you really have to kind of balance what it is that you're doing and how many cards that you're playing. And again, as I've already said a couple times, you're going to be doing most of this through various tests. So let's look at this one right here. If I chose to try to do this one, you'll see it's a lock-picking check, and I get to draw 2 or more cards from my deck, and this chain means I can only play 2 of them, and I'm looking for 3 successes to succeed on it. Then you look down here and it says, the door swings open if I succeed, and I'll change out this green card here for another card which has what's inside this locked door, and if I fail, this is what happens down here. In this case, I'm unable to open it, and I wasted all the cards that I drew with the exception of one I'd be able to keep. So what I mean by looking for stars is this. So it says here I can draw 2 or more cards. So I could just draw 2 cards from the top of my deck and take a look. There I have 1 and a half stars. So I would have failed. Now the half stars matter because let's say I had drawn 3 cards. Well, I have my 1 star here, but then I can put these 2 together and make another star. So that would be 2 stars. However, if you remember, I can only keep 2 cards to play. So in this case, even if I'd drawn all 3 of these, I would still only have 1.5 stars, which is a far cry from the 3 that I need. Then all 3 of these cards would then be discarded. However, you'll note that I would get to keep 1 as the fail condition. Now, had I been lucky and drawn something like this, then that's the 3 stars I needed and I would have succeeded. You'll also then be able to play cards out of your hand. And that's what these symbols here mean. In this case, this symbol means if I had this in my hand, I could always on any test use this ability down here. Whereas some cards like this one here are only able to be played on that kind of check. So this Relentless Assault can only be played on a combat check. At the risk of being too spoilery, combat looks something like this. And what these wind up being is these just wind up being combat checks. And what you're doing is you're going through and whatever it is you're fighting has 1 or more levels that you have to get through. This one here, you'll see the first level that you're fighting has 4 health on it. And so as you go through, you're drawing your cards, and each star that you get winds up doing a damage. But you'll notice, again, it's chained. So this one, I can draw 2 or more cards, but I can only play 2 of them. If I succeed, we move down to the next level, and I try to do that. If I fail, I take whatever damage there is over here, and we move on. And as you go through, you'll see various things happen. The beginning, you banish a card, and you wind up discarding a card, but you keep a card. Down here, you have to discard 2 cards. There you get to keep 1, but if you succeed, you still get to keep one of the cards that you use, but you take damage, and so on and so on. And you get the idea of how that works. But again, all of these checks that you're making are done the same, just with a lot of variety of how they play out. And you're combining those with the different types of cards you have in your hands. Or you might be dealing with movement checks or strength checks or combat checks or lock-picking checks or, and there's a whole bunch of different options that are out there. Along with that, you'll be finding things as you go. You might find equipment like this one right here. This is a whip, which I can use in combat or on a strength check. And again, it tells you what's going to happen as you go through. So for example, on this one, sometimes it might say you have to use, say, 6+ cards. Well, I don't want to get rid of 6+ cards, but I could use this, and then I could draw 3 less. And so I could do 3+ cards for that particular check. Because again, you're going to be discarding all those cards that you don't get to keep. Additionally, you'll be going through, you'll be finding items that you get to keep, which give you abilities. You're going to be taking permanent status effects, which are going to hurt you. You might even do something like this here, where you're carrying a body the whole time, and now every single time you do anything, you're losing one of your successes every single time. And I'm hoping that you're getting the idea of what's going on. In addition to that, the game comes with this whole book of dialogue. And again, I'm just going to open to one page and not show too much, but as you go through, sometimes they'll say, read this dialogue in the book, and then it'll give you more choices, and that's going to tell you what it is that you're going to do as you're going through and telling this story. Now, that's it. The core mechanics of this game are actually very simple. There's just a lot of variety in it. So, what do I like about this game? First of all, I like the depth of the story in the game. Again, I only had the prototype, which is only one quest that you're going through, and it's pretty linear as you're just getting to experience everything in the game. But there is a lot of story in this game. It really has a choose-your-own-adventure feel to it. And from what I've seen, the choices you make do have effect down the road. I've already run into that a couple of times. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that pretty much every choice you make, even just where to go, can also have long-lasting effects on your campaign, on your story. What do you choose to do? What do you choose to explore? What choices do you make? For example, this one here, you have a choice. You can try to save her and take her with you, or you can just leave her and let her die. And if you take her with you, it's going to make it harder for you to get out, but presumably down the road, that will have an effect on your story. Or you can just leave her and not worry about it. And again, that will probably have an effect down the road in the story. And I really appreciate that. I also appreciate how your cards are so closely tied to your life and what you can do, but they are not your life. You get through this, and if you have to shuffle, okay, you're going to take damage. Okay, fine. And that ties into all of these checks you're doing, because all of these checks is going to tell you, you want to take more than 2 cards, go ahead, take as many as you want. But that is wasting your energy. And that feels very thematic to me as you are putting in energy to all of these different tests. How hard are you trying? How much time are you taking? And so on and so on. And that is very, very clever. I also appreciate the way that the cards work. The cards in your hand, in some ways, they are very specialized. And so sometimes you're just sitting there with cards like, oh gosh, I don't know what to do with these things. But then suddenly the moment comes up. The moment comes up like on this one here, where you have the stealth character and you have the lock picking, and suddenly, boom, you open the door, you go through, and it feels fantastic. I also really appreciate, again, I'm going back to the story here for a moment, how the choices are so varied in their result. There are times where you're like, oh, well, doing this thing, that's what a good person would do, so I should be rewarded. No, you're not. There was times where I did what I thought was the good thing to do, and I got punished for it royally because I just was wrong, and that keeps you on your toes. You're not able to predict what is going to be better mechanically in the game, and so really you have to rely on what kind of characters that you are creating. And so all of that I really enjoy, and I like the promise of what comes after this whole, I'm going to call it city building. You're going to be kind of building your colony, and after this intro scenario, you jump a year in time, and now you're managing your community as you're trying to survive in this world. And the promise of that is very exciting to me, though, again, I didn't get to try it, so I don't know exactly how that works. So what are my quibbles with the game? And the first quibble is it's kind of a sprawling game as you're going through. It seems like you actually need a pretty big table to deal with this, because as you're going, these cards, they start going in all different directions. You don't actually know where they're going, and it can be a little hard to manage on the table. And then my next quibble with the game is I don't know how replayable it's going to be. And again, because this first scenario is kind of on rails, it's you're here and you're trying to get out, I don't know that you're going to want to keep playing it over and over again. I mean, yes, you come back with different characters, it's going to be a different experience. Most of these cards that you're drawing, it'll say draw a number 12 card, which means there's multiple options for that room or whatever that you're going into. And so there is that replayability there, but the core of it is the same of what you're doing to get out. And so not knowing how expansive the other scenarios are, I don't know how replayable it's going to be. My initial instinct is it will be replayable, but not infinitely. It is my initial guess. Though, again, I could be proven wrong if the following scenarios have tons of options and tons of ways you can go. So just something to keep in mind. You might play through this once, maybe twice, and that might be it. Though, that might not be a problem, because with the amount of hours promised in this campaign, it might not matter. Playing it through twice will be a ton of time spent with the game. And then the only other thing that I will say, and I'm not usually a miniature kind of guy, but these things are so I mean, is that the size of my thumbnail? Yeah, it's the size of my thumbnail, and I have tiny little hands. So they're super, super, super tiny. So if you're someone who likes to paint and stuff, well, good luck painting these guys. And then the very last thing I'll say is there is some scaling for number of characters with the division of how much health you have. You divide it out amongst your characters. But I don't know, and that's because I got this game relatively late in the campaign, don't know how well it will scale for playing with 4 characters as opposed to playing with 1 character, playing with 2 or 3. So again, just something to keep an eye on if you're hoping to play this with a group of 4, or you're just going to play by yourself. It's just something to keep an eye on. But there you have it, folks. That is 7th Citadel. I have to say, I was quite impressed with this. I never got excited by 7th Continent, so I never played it, never tried it. But thankfully, Michael Kelly at One Stop Co-op Shop got his prototype. He sent it on to Barrett at Meet Me at the Table, who then was kind enough to ship it on to me, so I got to try it. And I'm pretty impressed. I think the storytelling in this game is good, potentially fantastic. I think the character variety and the way you're able to grow your characters promises to be very, very exciting as well. And all the different things that can happen in the way that the choices you make and how it affects your character and your story and your success is delightful. And I'll also say it's not easy. I did not survive. Actually, I haven't gotten out of this first scenario at all yet, having survived. I finally got to the last time I just had to flip to and pretend I succeeded. And I think that is good. I think the challenge is very promising in this game. But there you have it, folks. That is the 7th Citadel. If I made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with a timestamp. I'll get that into the Klingon subtitles. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.